Hello, today we are discussing our assignment for week 7, and that is the models as root causes and drivers of immigration. We'll be using material that was developed by Raul Delgado Wise. One of them was the video presentation for OIS Cumbre 2013. Panel 2, Migration, Changing Patterns, Conflicting Policies, and Lasting Impacts. And also an article that we printed off called A Critical Overview of Migration and Development, the Latin American Challenge. And again, all the materials by Raul Delgado Wise. Now, Mr. Delgado Wise seems to approach the subject from the historical structural perspective, which is something that he explains is rooted in Marx theory and dependency theory, and this fits in with what we have been talking about lately. One of the first things that he brings up is the change in development strategy in the 1930s from commodities, from developing commodities in their own land and sending the resources through the international markets into industrialization, internal industrialization, and people began to question this theory, and it gave rise, as the article says, to the dependency theory. There had been an unequal relationship between trading partners, which undermined the development of the Latin American countries, and ISI became the policy that resulted from this, which is something that's not really explained very well within the article, but it was a new strategy that was developed to combat this. The idea behind this is that the state would produce the goods that were being imported from other nations, that people would buy these products from the state instead of from foreign companies. And if anybody has ever been to Mexico, Pemex is a good example of this. This brought about rapid economic growth, and it became the growth became very unbalanced, and it resulted in migration flows from the rural areas to the cities. And the article says that 1 in 3 Latin Americans live in a city with 1 million or more people. And this part of that was because of this type of policy. As far as production and benefit to the states were concerned, this worked out very well until the 1970s, when imports were needed by these nations. This led to a financial collapse of different nations, including Mexico. In 1982, Mexico had a financial collapse, and this brought about the enforcement of neoliberal policies. Now, the neoliberal policies are explained by Delgado Wise inside the article. He gives 5 different policies. One of them is the internationalization of capital, the restructuring of innovation process, financialization, environmental degradation, and flexibilization of labor. This is where it became rather interesting to me. He tells about the new pressures for people to emigrate, including labor markets becoming unstable, and this results in the migration of skilled labor, which is a key component to the economies of any country. When a company doesn't have its skilled workers, it's not making as much profit either. When a nation loses them, eventually the unskilled workers go to follow, and there are going to be fewer companies that will want to work or produce things inside that nation as well. And what happens while the skilled workers were at the nation that they originally came from, while they were there, they were appreciated. Whereas when they went to the new nation, they became exploited, which means they weren't very appreciated. They were underpaid. The exploitation of labor by Mexico to the United States was very interesting, because I thought that the exportation of skilled labor by Mexico to the United States was very interesting, because it was number 2 behind India, according to the speech that Delgado Wise gave. This sheds a lot of light on the reasoning behind the link between the world dependency theory and why we have waves of immigration that follow. He talked about remittances a little bit, which I thought was interesting because it goes right in the on what the reduction of productivity by nations. Workers who leave the country that they came from leave their production with them, and the remittances that they send back to the country do not make up for the productivity that the company that they worked for loses out on, and the loss of its workers causes the nation of origin to continue on with the cycle of not being able to keep its workers. So it's just a big cycle that that a lot of countries face. I thought that the end of the video that Delgado Wise was in was rather interesting, and he brought up a very good point about some of the policies that Ecuador was using. Ecuador is using a policy to attract skilled workers by drawing them through getting free education, and Mexico may be able to learn a lesson from this. But of course, people leave countries for more than just educational opportunities. Many people have left Mexico because of societal collapse, and many workers that leave nations, according to Delgado Wise on page 651, are expelled because there has been a breakdown of society. So not necessarily expelled as in the government's kicked them out, more like expelled because they don't have any opportunities from where they came from, and so they are forced to leave in that sense. And when they reach the countries that they are immigrating to, they are exploited and don't get paid enough for the work, for the skills that they possess. I want to thank you very much, and I look forward to talking with you later. Bye.